The fly we're going to tie today is a fur Caddis Pupa. This is brought to you by the Kennebec Valley Fly Tires and sponsored by the Kennebec Valley chapter of Trout Unlimited. The materials for this fly are the 3906 hook, 6/0 thread, black or brown to match the color of the head, small copper wire, a little bit of 15 thousandths non-lead lead wire, some Antron dubbing for the abdomen, and zonker strip or rabbit skin for the head of the fly. We'll start to thread on this fly about 2 eye sizes back from the eye. Take this copper wire and just lift it into place and then make one wrap around it. One additional wrap and then pull it in so that the end is right under those first couple wraps, and wrap to the back of the hook. Put the wire in the material clip and let the bobbin hang. And we'll get some of that 15 thousandths lead. This is a size 12 hook, so 15 thousandths lead is pretty good. If you go up to a larger size, you could use the 25 thousandths lead, or lead-free lead wire is what we like to call this stuff. And I just trim the ends of this off. The lead is so soft, or tin is so soft, that you can cut it with your scissors, not worry about dulling them. And once you've cut it off, you wrap up to it and start to build a ramp in the back, and then make a wide transition wrap to the front. And then I'll speed this up here so you can see. I'm wrapping over that and building a ramp up and down on the front and back of that wire wrap. Now with that done, we're going to form a dubbing loop, and there are all kinds of tools you can use to form or for dubbing loops. They sell whirls, they sell all these spinners, but you can use something as simple as a paper clip. You don't have to go out and buy a special tool. And you straighten that paper clip out like that, and then just hook the thread in the curve that you left when you straightened it out, and make a loop here about 2 inches long, 2.5. Couple wraps, and then pass the bobbin and thread around the dubbing loop. That cinches it right up tight, and pull that thread right up against the bottom of the shank, and wrap forward and get your thread out of the way. Let the thread and the dubbing loop just hang while you get some Antron material. Now you don't need very much of this Antron. Matter of fact, probably half of what I'm going to use here. I really have too much in the loop, but this is about the most you can put in here and tie a fly that looks reasonably well balanced. If you put much more than this in there, it's going to be just too big and bulky. Now I just kind of gather these fibers together so I can put them in this dubbing loop. And once I've got them kind of gathered up, I'll take my finger and insert it in the loop. Pick that dubbing loop tool or paper clip up, get my finger in there to widen the loop out. And just get this Antron material between those 2 pieces of thread that form the dubbing loop, or the 2 strands of the dubbing loop, and then start to spin it. And you just spin and twist and spin, and just keep spinning always in the same direction till you wrap that into a good tight wrap, and you'll see those fibers are well wrapped up in there. They're not going to come loose. You can see they're staying right in place. And having formed my fur noodle, if you will, I'll now take this and start wrapping, and I wrap one wrap to get to the back of the hook. I want this body to start right at the end of the thread bed that I laid down, and I just start wrapping forward, being careful not to let that thread loop slide off the end of the paper clip. And I just keep wrapping forward, passing it over and reaching under and grabbing it. I do have a rotary vise. With a rotary vise, you can just hang the bobbin out in the cradle and you just wrap this up very quickly. But I'll do it like this in a stationary format. And we get right to the end here, and it wasn't quite twisted up good, so I just make a couple more turns to get that last little bit twisted. And then pass the thread in back of and underneath the dubbing loop and make a wrap over, another wrap. And normally you'd have enough length here to just go ahead and cut this off, but I can't get my scissors in there. I just barely made this dubbing loop long enough. So I'll just slide the paper clip out, trim off that little bit, and neaten that up. And we'll form another dubbing loop for the head. Everything looks okay. I don't have any gaps in the body. Before we do the head dubbing loop, of course, we've got to do this wrap of the wire. I like to take one wrap behind the body and then start leaning the wire forward towards the eye and wrapping towards the eye. A lot of people would counter wrap this and wrap in reverse instead of in the same direction as the dubbing. It's up to you. This way, if going with the dubbing body material, the copper kind of lays down in the material. If you wrap it the other way, it sits right up on top and adds more flash to your fly. Again, it's completely up to you. Once you get to the end, though, just make a couple wraps over it, twist it off, and we'll form that dubbing loop for the rabbit's fur now, which will be the head of the fly. So again, I just take my paper clip, hook the loop in there, make a wrap, and then pass the bobbin around the dubbing loop, pull it up snug, wrap forward and get my thread out of the way, my bobbin as much out of the way as you can, kind of close to the eye now, you don't have anywhere to go. So I'll bring my Zonker strip, or you could certainly use a rabbit skin, but a good way to get a bunch of different colors of rabbit body hair is to buy a few different colors of Zonker strips. You can use them for streamers, and you have the ability to just cut some off like this and use it for dubbing. I didn't do a very neat job transferring this to my other hand, but you get the general idea. You want those kind of spread out over about an inch, inch and a half of distance. Take my dubbing loop again and open it up with my finger. Get this in between the two pieces of thread. Take my finger out and close that up and start spinning this to form a dubbing noodle. It's much quicker with the dubbing whirls and other things that are made specifically for this, but again, you don't need fancy tools to do dubbing loops. Certainly this paper clip will do just fine. I haven't got that started and wrapped once. I'm going to pull this thread to the back as I make these subsequent wraps, and that'll get all that fur going towards the rear. And as you wrap, you have to be careful not to pull back so hard on the fur that you're stroking to the rear. You have to be careful not to pull so hard that you end up wrapping back towards the bend because you pulled the thread back there. So just stroke those fibers to the rear and wrap. 2 or 3 wraps, whatever it takes to get you up to the eye. You certainly don't want to crowd the eye. I'm going to come up under my thread here, and I now have that dubbing loop trapped. And get my finger in there and try to move that. I can't move it, but that dubbing loop is trapped. You see it unwind when I let go of it right there. I could just let go and free up that hand to pull the fibers back out of the way. Now that I got a couple wraps to secure it, I'll just go ahead and cut the excess dubbing loop off. Stroke that material to the rear. A few wraps, got that little bunch sticking out in the way. Get rid of it. Wet my fingers a little bit to get those fibers to stay back. Build a smooth head and get my whip finish tool and tie a knot here. You could use a couple half hitches. If you don't have a whip finish tool, half hitches work just fine. You want to put at least 3 of them in. They don't hold, they're not that secure. It seems like if you put half hitches in, You better put 3 because one comes untied while you're reaching for the head cement. But whip finish tools make a nice neat job of a whip finish knot, and it's very secure. I still cement them. Some people don't bother if they do whip finish knots, they just do 2 and then they don't use any head cement at all. Okay. Now that you got that tied off and cut off, stroke all these fibers so they stick out from the hook like this. Seems counterintuitive after you stroked them all to the rear, but you're just pulling them out so you can trim flush with the body on the top and the sides. I'm taking advantage of my rotary feature, but you certainly can do this in a stationary vise. Just not quite as easy, but you certainly can do it. And there are the fibers I didn't get those extra long ones there. The fibers I didn't trim on the bottom become the legs of the fly, and that black fur that you trimmed on the sides and head is the head of the fly. So there you have it. There's a fur Caddis Pupa all done, and if anything, you maybe just want to trim it up a little bit. You can come in here and neaten up that head. The fish won't care, but other fly tyers will look at it and think, gee, he should have trimmed that up. So there's your legs, tapered body, your head, all done with dubbing loops. Again, this is brought to you by Kennebec Valley Fly Tires, sponsored by the Kennebec Valley chapter of Trout Unlimited. And thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video.